Jason walked into his office building and greeted his colleague. "How's everything going, Matt?" "Great," Matt replied, settling into his seat behind the reception desk. Jason owned a small construction company in Monroe, Louisiana. Sipped his coffee while reviewing the progress of his current project. It was early, just 9 a.m., when a woman entered the office. "Hi, I'm Wilma Anderson. I live in the Garden District here in Monroe. I'd like to repair my basement. It's old and has been locked up for as long as I can remember," she said. That's no problem. My team and I can handle the job with ease," Jason assured her. "Great. Thank you so much. I don't know much about how these things work, but it should be straightforward. All is I want for you to clean up down there, fix the plumbing, and leave the rest of the space open." "Mrs. Anderson, you need not worry. Everything will be done exactly how you want it," Jason promised. Jason checked his schedule, but unfortunately, all his workers were occupied with another project. He wouldn't have an opening until 2 weeks later. "All right, Mr. Anderson, we can start the project next month," he said. "What? No. I need this done urgently," she insisted. "Mrs. Anderson, I'm sorry, but it's just not possible. I'm working on another project at the moment, and you can't expect me to stop midway." Despite Jason's explanations, Mrs. Anderson continued to press for immediate action. Her insistence was perplexing, and Jason watched in surprise as she pulled out a wad of bills and placed it onto the table. "Here, this is double the money for the project. I'm willing to pay triple if you'll start by tomorrow," she said. Jason sighed. "All right, Mrs. Anderson. I'm not making any promises just yet. I'll call you later today and let you know." Later that day, Jason called Mrs. Anderson to inform her that he and his team would start working on her basement the following day. After discussing the matter with Matt, who was intrigued by the generous offer for such a small project, Jason decided to postpone his other projects and divide his workers into 2 teams for convenience. The next morning, Jason and his team arrived at Mrs. Anderson's house. She asked them to wait while she went to her room. Moments later, she returned fumbling with a bunch of keys. She led them downstairs and began unlocking the basement door. Jason was taken aback by the number of locks and deadbolts on the door. It took Mrs. Anderson 10 minutes to sort through her keys and open each lock. The first day was dedicated to inspection, to determine what repairs needed to be done and what materials would be required. When Mrs. Anderson opened the basement door, a strong, damp odor filled the air. She held her nose and said, "No one has been down here in so many years. Almost 20. "Wow," Jason remarked. "Based on the odor, I suspect there must be mold inside." Mrs. Anderson left the men to their work and went back upstairs. Jason entered the dark basement, searching for the lights. He soon found a switch and flipped it. but the light bulb flickered weakly. The illumination was poor and inconsistent, casting eerie shadows across the room. Despite the dim lighting, Jason could see bats perched on the ceiling and hear the scurrying of rats in the corners. His team got to work immediately, but within an hour, they discovered major issues with the basement's electrical system. Jason, though not an electrician, had basic knowledge of wiring. Despite his efforts, the lights continued to flicker and sometimes went out entirely. The team managed to complete the day's work using their flashlights, since their main task was to clear out the junk. The next day, Jason arrived at the house at 8 a.m. with some of the necessary supplies. He planned to finish the day's work by 8 p.m. The team made significant progress, but the electrical issues persisted. Around 6 p.m., Jason's truck arrived with the remaining materials. He sent his co-workers upstairs to check the delivery, while he stayed behind to finish up some tasks and joined them later. As everyone headed upstairs, leaving Jason alone in the basement, he cautiously turned the knob on a pipe. Suddenly, there was a loud blast, and the lights went out. Jason shrugged and pulled out his flashlight, heading towards the electrical panels. After struggling for about 10 minutes, he couldn't resolve the problem. Then, from the far corner of the room, Jason heard a strange noise. Assuming it was Matt returning, he called out, "Hey, we need to call in an electrician. It's not possible to work like this." There was no reply, but the clanging chains sound persisted. "Matt, is that you?" Jason called again. Turning around, Jason swept his flashlight across the room, but found no one there. He scratched his head, puzzled by the noise. Just as he turned back, a croaking sound startled him. He swung his flashlight around again, demanding, "Who's there?" Jason's flashlight began to flicker, and the battery seemed to be dying. His anxiety grew as the light dimmed, and soon he was in complete darkness. Realizing he wasn't alone made him uneasy. He pulled out his lighter, its small flame barely illuminating a 2-foot radius around him. With this scant light, he cautiously made his way toward the exit. The basement was eerily silent, save for Jason's own breathing. His hands trembled as he took small, deliberate steps towards the door. He scanned the shadows, his heart racing. Suddenly, he heard the clanging noise again. It stopped. Jason's blood ran cold when he felt a chilling presence near his neck. Cold metal chains began to constrict around him, tightening painfully. He struggled, trying to pull the chains away, but the force only increased. Just before he lost consciousness, he heard a whisper close to his ear, the voice cold and vengeful.
You can't trap me here forever.
Jason's vision blurred, and his strength gave out as the darkness engulfed him. When the power outage occurred throughout the house, Jason's team was left in the dark. Upon returning, they found Jason unconscious on the basement floor. Mrs. Anderson immediately offered assistance and instructed the workers to carry Jason upstairs. Matt, Jason's business partner, decided to stay behind with Jason at Mrs. Anderson's house, where he was alarmed to see red marks around Jason's neck. After about an hour, Jason regained consciousness. Matt, someone or something is in the basement, Jason said, struggling to sit up. There was a power outage, Jason. Perhaps an intruder snuck in, Matt suggested. Mrs. Anderson took a deep breath, her face pale. No, Matt, there wasn't an intruder. I should have told you earlier. But I was afraid you wouldn't take the job if you knew the full truth. I desperately need the basement renovated to rid it of its evil presence. There isn't a person down there. There's something beyond this life. And knowing what it is only makes it more terrifying. I've been restless, unable to sleep because of those noises. The worst part is, I recognize them. This is my family home. And now, I live here with my children. My husband passed away a few years ago. If only he were here, maybe we could have resolved this together. But now I have no choice but to ask for your help. Please, destroy everything downstairs and build it anew. I grew up here with my family, my father, my mother, my elder brother, and me. It all started when my brother returned from a hunting trip to Green Bay, Wisconsin. He had a hobby of hunting and taxidermy. There's a whole collection of taxidermied animals in storage: deers, wolves, bears, birds, and more. After this particular trip, my brother began behaving strangely. He was enraged, hostile, and began hurling insults at everyone. When he attacked my mother, we knew something was seriously wrong. We tried to isolate him and brought in doctors, but they couldn't understand his condition. They recommended a rehabilitation center for anger management. But my mother refused. She couldn't bear to see her son confined, despite her efforts. My brother's condition worsened. The yelling and shouting alarmed the neighbors. My father cleaned out the basement to contain the noise, but I knew there was more going on. My father had to shackle my brother to keep him from hurting himself. At night, I would hear him banging the chains against the walls. It was devastating, but I knew my parents were trying their best to help. Unfortunately, my brother passed away from his illness. But I ignored them until now. Living alone with my children, it's terrifying to think something is lurking beneath us. So you believe your late brother's restless soul is still in the basement? Matt asked. I'm not sure. He was a good person. My brother. And a good son. I find it hard to believe it's him. I'd rather think it's whatever overpowered him, Mrs. Anderson replied. Mrs. Anderson, if this is the case, I don't think renovating the basement will solve the problem. Take this card, Matt said. He's a highly knowledgeable expert. He might be able to offer you a solution. Mrs. Anderson took the card, her expression troubled. Jason, I'm really sorry for what you went through. It's all right, Mrs. Anderson. I understand what you're going through, Jason said, though he looked wary. Jason and his crew completed the basement renovation with extra caution. The job took an additional 2 days, but they finished it well. Fortunately, the issue seemed to resolve once the renovation was complete. Mrs. Anderson wanted to express her gratitude, but when she visited Jason's office 2 weeks later, she was stunned to find it shut down. Hello, Matt? I was just thinking of calling you, Mrs. Anderson said when she reached him. Mrs. Anderson, we need your help. Jason has been unwell ever since we left your house. There's something strange going on with him.
If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends and family.
It was the start of summer vacation. Aaron was thrilled. Recently, he received an acceptance letter from SA University. And there was only a few months before he would move to New York City. Aaron thought before he left, he would spend the summer with his close buddies, and especially with his girlfriend, Stephanie. But after a few days of partying, Aaron was sitting back at home with absolutely nothing to do. So, he decided to get a job. Saving up some money was always a good idea, and it would come in handy when he started college. And soon, Aaron conveniently got a job as a supervisor at a new indoor swimming pool enclosure at a shopping center. Aaron had worked a few jobs, but he was excited about this job in particular. On his first day, the manager of the center called him to his office and handed Aaron a pair of keys. Aaron smirked. He had gotten himself a grand opportunity, and now that he was in charge of closing up and locking the center, that meant he would have the pool all to himself at the end of the day. Just what he wanted. The first day that Aaron started working at the swimming pool, he met a lot of people. But since it was his first day, the manager had stayed with him and showed him around. Aaron went straight to the diner. Stephanie was waiting for him there. How did it go at work? I was really looking forward to swimming all by myself after closing, but the manager was with me all day. It was your first day. I'm sure you'll get a chance tomorrow. I ordered your favorite sundae. Only a few months till September. I'm gonna miss coming here. You'll only miss coming here? Aren't you gonna miss anything else? Anyone else? Yeah, Stephanie, there is. I'm going to miss your cute pet cat. We really got to bond over the last 3 years. Will you ever express your true feelings? Aaron and Stephanie stayed at the diner until it was late. He dropped off Stephanie at her place before he went home himself. He couldn't forget he had to work the next morning. The next day, not a lot of people came to the center. Aaron supposed today would be a slow day. There was still an hour left of his shift. Aaron sat down in the watchroom. He was a little elevated than the rest of the platform, so he had a good view of the whole swimming pool. Only a few people had come in. Aaron wasn't expecting any other people to arrive so late. The area was now empty. Aaron went down to fix up the chairs. As he walked down, he began to get a strange feeling like someone was watching him, following his every move. He took a quick glance around. No one but him. Aaron continued organizing some containers onto a shelf. He heard footsteps behind him. It sounded like someone got down into the pool. Aaron could hear the noise of the water ripples. He continued arranging the boxes as he said over his shoulder, "Please get out of the water. It's closing time." But it seemed as if the person hadn't heard him. Aaron sighed and turned around. At once, he froze. The enclosure was completely empty. Aaron was a bit spooked. He looked in every direction, but it was pin drop silent. What was even more puzzling was that the water in the pool was absolutely still. Aaron shook his head. Was he going crazy working here? Fixing furniture all day? How was he hearing ripples in the water? Aaron needed some fresh air. He quickly arranged the rest of the furniture and closed the center. Stephanie was waiting for him outside the swimming center. "You're out early? How long were you waiting for me?" "Like an hour or so. What's wrong? You don't look all right." "Nothing. Just wasn't feeling too good." "Maybe a walk around the park, some fresh air, and then the movies will make you feel better." Aaron smiled. Stephanie always tried to make his day. He couldn't imagine life without her. The next day at the center, Aaron recognized some of the people who came. He spun his whistle as he watched all people in the water. To be honest, the job was pretty boring. He was more a cleanup guy than a real supervisor. He cleaned up the floats, made sure all the first aid equipment was available in stock just in case of emergencies. There were still 10 minutes till closing, and there was no one at the center except for him. Finally, he had the pool all to himself. Aaron locked the front door of the enclosure and returned to the swimming pool. He leaped into the water. And took a round before sitting up on the platform. Aaron climbed a step down in the water. Suddenly, he felt something move by his feet. What is going on? Aaron started to panic. He became a little anxious. Just then, something grabbed him by the ankle, and within seconds, Aaron felt a strong tug. He slipped down on the steps into the pool. Aaron struggled to hold still. He quickly gripped onto the handrails with all his strength. He tried to kick off whatever had grabbed onto him, but the force of the pull only increased. It was, however, only a few minutes before Aaron had managed to pull himself out of the pool. But those few minutes were nerve-wracking. Aaron felt a numbness in his feet. He stared at a red imprint of a hand on his skin around his ankles. There was no doubt that someone had grabbed him. Aaron stood up on the platform and checked the waters. He couldn't see anything, but he was too nervous to get in the waters again. He ran to the watchroom and checked the security. As he thought, there was no one in the enclosure except for him. He fast-forwarded to the moment he sat down by the pool. To his amazement, when he closely examined the footage, there was no one else pulling him. He was struggling in the water all by himself. Aaron was thundered. He looked at the pool. It was pin-drop silent. He got a strange feeling something wasn't right. Aaron packed his things and rushed out of the center that night. Aaron couldn't go to work the next morning. He had a high fever and couldn't get out of bed. Stephanie came over to his house. "I brought you some soup. Don't worry, you'll get better soon. But I don't understand how you got a sudden fever. Were you in the water for too long?" "No, Stephanie. Something happened. I was all alone. I was sure there was no one there, but something grabbed me." Aaron told Stephanie what happened the previous night, but Stephanie shook it off as a hallucination. Aaron showed her the marks on his ankle, but even then, Stephanie was skeptic. "Aaron, you need to rest. This isn't you. It's just the fever talking." When the fever had reduced after 3 days straight, Aaron returned to the center. But he only went to pick up his salary. Aaron had become paranoid. He feared getting into the water again and decided to quit the job. Without much of a hassle, he picked up his check and gathered his belongings from the office. As he went out the front door, he met the security guard. Looking at his things in his hand, the security guard said, "You're leaving the center early?" "No, Mr. Phillip. I quit the job." "All of a sudden? What happened?" "Something strange happened when I was in the pool." "Mr. Phillip, you've been working here for many years now. Has there ever been any unusual accidents at the center?" "Well, this swimming enclosure is pretty old. This is almost like the 10th year since it first opened." 10 years? I thought this was opened a few months back." "You were mistaken. I've been here for about 5, and during these years, there's one incident that comes to mind. About 3 years ago, an elderly man named Raymond Schneider used to come here for swimming lessons. He was a bit elderly and had a strange phobia about the water. Most of the instructors that worked here had left their jobs over the years. The instructor that was here 3 years ago wasn't too experienced, but he tried to encourage the elderly man and motivated him into completing the lessons. "I don't know if I'll be able to do this. Living in Florida for my whole life, and Even at age 50, I don't know how to swim. Call me back in 15 minutes. Yes, Mr. Schneider. We learn new things every day, and swimming is easy. Just like how you learn to ride a bike. Once you learn, you'll never forget. I don't know. Don't worry, I'll be in the water with you. You have nothing to fear. Me? You're doing great. Alright, this isn't that bad. Oops, looks like that's my phone. I'll be right back. I won't be able to swim by myself. Wait. Just a minute, I'll be right back. After that incident, some people began complaining about the carelessness of the instructor. The swimming center was kept closed for inspection. It later failed inspection and had to be shut down. It was only recently that the center had been renovated with better safety precautions before it was reopened again. Hearing the strange incident behind the swimming pool enclosure only made Aaron even more paranoid. He spent the rest of the summer chilling at home and spending time with his friends. Before long, it was the end of August. Aaron boarded his flight to New York. Call me when you get there. I'll miss you. Life in New York was great. The professors at SA were awesome. Aaron was enjoying the stay. Suddenly, early one morning, he got a call from his girlfriend. Aaron, get up right now. Did you check the SA newspaper? No, what happened? Check the article on the 4th page, right now. Aaron got out of bed and checked the newspaper. It was about an event in Florida. Aaron was thundered to see. It was about the swimming pool enclosure he worked at this summer. After he left, 2 other supervisors were hired, both of whom accidentally drowned in the pool. After another inspection, the swimming enclosure was shut down for good.
If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends and family.
Mr. Anderson, could you please turn on all the lights in the auditorium? My dancers will be here soon. Lindsay pulled the curtains on the stage as Mr. Anderson mopped the aisles down the auditorium. Lindsay and Mr. Anderson both worked at the SA Theater in Manhattan, New York. Lindsay had been working there for about a year, and Mr. Anderson was the janitor. They were the first of all people who would be arriving at the theater every morning. Lindsay was about to walk down the stage when she noticed something in the corner of her eye. Someone was laying motionless backstage. Lindsay ran to see it was one of her dancers, Evelyn White. She quickly checked if she was breathing. Mr. Anderson, call an ambulance immediately. Evelyn White was a 21-year-old young woman. She was an aspiring ballerina, one of Lindsay's most talented dancers. Lindsay had been training a few young women for their solo performances at the theater, and Evelyn was the first to perform today. It will be your time to shine, Evelyn. All eyes will be on you, so take care of yourself. I know, Miss Lindsay. I'm so excited for the show. I'll give my best. This could be the beginning of a great career, Evelyn. We still have a few more days. Don't miss out on practice. Of course not, Miss Lindsay. I've been practicing day and night. Evelyn was confident. She was always cheerful and looked at the positive side of things, even if sometimes there weren't any. Lindsay took pride in Evelyn. She was a very good dancer, and Evelyn never gave up. She was a motivation to the other ballerinas as well. Lindsay went along with the paramedics who pulled Evelyn into the ambulance. She knew Evelyn lived all by herself. There was no one who could look after her. Lindsay not only instructed her dancers, but she had a strong bond with them. She couldn't just leave Evelyn in this state. Lindsay sat by Evelyn in the hospital room, waiting for her to regain her consciousness. The doctors had examined her and said she was fine and would be waking up soon. After a while, the door burst open. It was Mr. Jones, the production manager at the theater. How did this happen? How will she perform? The show is tonight. I don't know, Mr. Jones. Right now, all I care about is her health. Forget about the show. Forget about the show? Do you know how much money will go down the drain? You have to call in her understudy as soon as possible. We can figure something out later. But Mr. Jones, this is so strange. You don't think someone intentionally tried to harm my dancers? But the rest of the ballerinas weren't supposed to be at the theater until 10. How did she get there at this time, or did she not leave the theater at all? This isn't the first time something strange like this has happened here. There were other performers at this theater some time back who experienced strange things. They ended up quitting their jobs and leaving. Well, that could be a possibility. She stayed back late. All the performers have a spare key to the theater. That's what I'm trying to say. This must be planned. This can't be a coincidence. I don't know if someone's been planning this. I've actually heard a lot of rumors about this theater being haunted. It's rare, but I've heard some complaints before and some stories of previous performers. Some singers and dancers reported feeling dizzy and nauseated, sometimes cold on the stage. Some have complained of seeing hovering figures roaming the auditorium, and sometimes they even say they hear something or someone constantly humming in the background. Haunted? No, out of all the explanations, that can't be it. I know, it's all bogus, but I can't seem to think of anybody who would want to harm Evelyn. Just then, Lindsay and Jones noticed Evelyn move her finger. She was waking up. Evelyn opened her eyes and looked around. She sat up looking startled and afraid. Evelyn, what happened to you? I found you unconscious on the floor backstage. I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? What happened? Miss Lindsay, yesterday after practice, I packed up with the rest of the ballerinas at 8 as usual, and I left the theater. But when I got home, I realized I left my cell phone. It was about 10 at night. I took my spare key and returned. By the time I got here, it was past 11. I unlocked the door and went straight to the dressing room to search for my cell phone. I've never visited the theater in the middle of the night before. It was so dark and scary. The lights in the auditorium were turned off and the curtains on the stage were drawn. I found my cell phone on the makeup table in the dressing room. I planned to quickly lock up and leave. when I heard someone singing in the hallway. The voice was mesmerizing. I had never heard someone singing so beautifully before. I was tempted to see who it was, so I left my things and went out. When I opened the door, the hallways were empty. I could still hear the music. It seemed to be coming from the stage. First, I was confused. I didn't expect anyone to be performing so late at night, but then I thought perhaps the theater was hosting a private show. I opened the backstage door. I was sure someone was performing on stage. I walked up to the curtains to take a peek. But when I peered through the curtains, I was shocked. The whole auditorium was packed with guests. Not a single seat was left vacant. They were cheering on the singer. All the lights were on and everything was decorated. I tried to put my head a little out to catch a glimpse of the young woman that was performing. All I could see was her long blonde hair and shiny red earrings. That was when someone in the audience spotted me. Suddenly, the whole auditorium fell silent, as if you could hear a pin drop. All attention was on me instead of her. It was just then I heard a loud, piercing cry. It was in a blink. Everyone in the auditorium vanished. What I saw and heard frightened me to my bone. It was so real. I felt the rhythm of the music vibrating under my feet. At that point, I was sure there was something wrong, but I couldn't move. I was frozen with fear. Like after that. And I fainted. This can't be. I knew I should have asked you early. Evelyn, have you been taking something lately? Some medication or rather something crazy? It sounds like you've been hallucinating. No, Miss Lindsay. I wouldn't compromise my career for anything. Wait a minute. If this really happened, was there anyone else who witnessed all these people in the theater? None of the other ballerinas were with me, but I know this sounds unbelievable. But trust me, the theater was full of people. At nearly 12 at night, I don't even think there are any blonde singers that work here. Impossible. I've never arranged any late night shows. You must have hit your head in the dark or something and fainted. You need rest. I'm just worried about the show tonight. Lindsay and Mr. Jones didn't believe Evelyn, but Evelyn was sure about what she saw the night before. She was discharged from the hospital later that day and returned home. She couldn't forget what happened. The next day, when she went to the theater, she decided to ask Mr. Anderson about the young woman she saw performing last night. Mr. Anderson had been working at the theater for a long time, maybe over a decade. He was sure to know everyone here. I don't know anyone of that description, Evelyn. This theater doesn't host any shows after 8. But there is one thing I've heard over the years I've been working here. This happened about 30 years ago, when this theater first opened. There was a woman named Catherine Wells who worked here. She was a singer. I'm not just any singer. She had an amazing voice, and she was praised greatly for her talent. People would often ask her to sing for them, but she always refused, saying the theater hosted a special night just for her. When news got around, tickets were sold out within the first day. The night was going well. Catherine sang like she never sang before. Suddenly, in the middle of her performance, she dropped to the ground right on the stage. By the time she was taken to the hospital, she passed away. Doctors said the cause of her death was a sudden heart attack. Perhaps you could find a news article about her. Evelyn immediately searched up Catherine Wells. She was shocked to see a picture of the young woman's performance 30 years ago. The long, blonde hair, the glimmering red earrings. This is the same woman I saw. Evelyn was terrified to have experienced something out of this world. She became so paranoid that she stopped going to the theater after that day. The following year, Evelyn decided to move to California for college. Many of her college friends and professors told her she was wasting a special talent she had. So Evelyn joined the theater at the SA University there and started performing again. She stepped out of the curtains, staring at the large gathering of people at the university. Evelyn was a little nervous. She smiled through the stage fright and she held her microphone. As her melodious voice echoed through the auditorium, the crowd listened to her in awe. Evelyn isn't a ballerina anymore. She's a singer. She can't explain how she did it. She's never sung in her life, nor has she taken any singing classes. But ever since that night, she's discovered she has an extraordinary talent.
If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends and family.